Okay, now that the body has been delivered to the upholsterer, I'm getting into the startup of the process for taking the OEM controller over to the MicroSquirt controller. From a packaging standpoint, that's a lot smaller. So that involved swapping over, changing out the IAC, the idle air control. This one was a 4-wire, which is allows for more activity. I'll call it that way, pulse width. And this wants a 2-wire, a stepper type that's traditionally used on Fords. So I made an adapter to convert from this to this style. And I won't get into the sordid details because it'd be too hard to understand and too hard to explain. But basically, made an adapter for the same mount to convert a Ford style, an 80s Ford style IAC into here because that's a pulse width modulation type IAC. So I did that, and I noticed that you get the body off. You can comb over this thing that you can see here. Here's my wiring harness, but you can see it's melted. Now, clearly the convoluted tubing is melted. The wiring inside it is not melted, but we're getting some temperature in here, so we need to deal with that. And the way those headers ran is those flanges came down at the oil pan. Well, you can see where my exhaust is, about a finger's width away from the pan, and they turned up. And I pretty well knew that going in, that this long term, this is just going to heat up the oil. They were too close to the frame. Remember when I modified the frame? That was a good year ago. But modified the frame and to accept the headers, and why did I fixate on not modifying the headers? Don't know, but I modified a lot of things. But anyway, I've got tons of clearance. I got too close to the steering, so I modified it, dinged the headers to modify them. And then today I opted to just simply pull the headers off and modify them. So I spent the good chunk of the day chopping off the flanges, shortening them up, getting them tucked up closer to the engine, and then the outlet side, or the spout, the three bolt spout to the exhaust, I moved that more toward the center now, and so I have to put these expansion joints on. Thank you. I can't remember who it was, but many moons ago, a guy said, "Hey, nice exhaust. Consider expansion connections." And yeah, stainless steel exhaust today, any OEM car you buy today is going to have some form of an expansion joint in it. So when I do the connecting pipes here, right there, I'm going to, if I will need to clock them a little bit to move them out, get them away from the starter a little more, and the oil filter a little bit more, and get them into farther away from the engine, kind of between the frame rail and the engine. So when I do that, make that modification, I'll weld those in. But the headers right now, they're in the oven, and I just fired it up. It's got a 30-minute bake, and it's got 23 minutes left. So I don't want to interrupt that. It's a paint that you do 3 cycles of baking on. So we'll get that done. But after I built the headers, then I came in, and this is all the grill. These are these are the radiator supports, the vertical radiator supports, right and left. These are the hood to cowl, or grill to cowl. These mount to those horizontally back to the cowl, and the little tabs to hold the hood sides in. That's that Dodge hood latch assembly. These are the cowl mounts for the adjustment. They're both slotted to be able to adjust these bars. That's the cover. I just fabbed up a cover to go on this side of the hood latch to cover up the cabling and make it decorative. And then those are the front body mounts to the frame. You might have recognized these. But anyway, I prepped all those, cleaned them all up, and then powder coated all that today in a flat black. It's kind of a satin black, and I had satin black, but I got an Exalta product. I was using the stuff from Harbor Freight, and it's fine, but you have to really, really, really watch. You got to get a light on it because it goes on way, way, way too light. Doesn't matter what you do with air pressure. So I got a good high quality brand powder coat, and these went very well. The coverage is just beautiful on them. It's nice, and it laid down really good. So that's kind of what I'm working on. Kind of boring because it's nickels and dimes, not a lot to show, not a lot of results. But you'll get a better understanding once I start bolting stuff together on what I was able to accomplish. So anyway, we're on the chassis. Car's in for upholstery, so we're on the chassis. The conversion to the new computer system. I am gonna. At this time, I'm looking at putting a ventilation system in. That's an F-150 for the fuel tank, a purge system. And I'm looking at my options there. That's just one that came out of that truck that I did for a customer a while ago because we vacated it on his truck. That was his choice. But I want to, I'm just using it for mock-up. The Ford uses a double charcoal canister system, which I'm not necessarily proud of or anything. I'm just looking at options of where locations are. The GM one is a round canister, and that might actually work better in this application. But at this point, I'm just looking. So, and then I go over and I'll clean up all of the marks from. There's the fenders coming on and going off 87 times. I did this piece. I wanted more beef, so this went on right here for the steering, that Hemi for the steering shaft, and it bolted through the top. I just didn't like the rigidity, so I quickly fabricated a side bracket for it, and drilled and tapped into the frame there. And now we'll have some better retention, or whatever assurance. It worked fine, but I wanted that assurance. So I like things going into the side to keep that load. The pressure's up against the frame rather than pulling against it. So with that 90 degrees, I should be able to cover any stresses on the steering, and it is steering. So. Anyway, that's where I'm at, and that's what's going on. I'll try to keep you posted as I mull through the boring stuff. All right, so I got the headers out, and now we can see we got a ton of clearance now. No more whining and complaining. And basically what I did was I hacked all these off. I had made this piece, I had plasma cut out to take the original port on these heads. These are the original 331 head, which is a smaller round port, and the headers were an oval port. And so the problem was, and I ported these heads, I ported and polished the heads, but I opened them up, but there isn't enough meat in these first gen heads to open them up to that size of an oval, number one. Number two is that oval changed the casting for the mounting surface. So if I put just the oval flanges on, I would go past the machine surface on the port of the cylinder head, and I'd have an exhaust leak. So the oval in two cases on the ends, on the inside, extended past the port slightly, so you just have an exhaust leak. So I use those transition plates. And in that 3/8 that I tapered out so I wouldn't have a strong edge, I tapered out to the oval on this side of the port and just, fanned out and ported them so that when I bolted the headers on. The thing is that of course spaced the header down 3/8 of an inch, which was not that big of a deal, but this was a good inch closer. So I took a half of an inch off of the length of the headers, okay, and just metal worked. You can see some weld there. I added a section in here and a section in here, and stretched to cut the pipe, to stretch them out to get back to the port on both sides. But it allowed me, and then the outlets were right at the pan. But of course, since I brought this up, I got a little bit away from it, but they were too close to the pan, and there's actually marks on the pan, wrench marks. Right there, you can see on the pan, wrench marks, and where the flange was touching, you had to clock it, just to get it right and all that stuff. So now I've got plenty of clearance all the way around, and I'm happy with it. On the other side, I left the length, just cut it flush with the flange, the original flange, and then welded it back on, but also clocked that down in a way. So now I have just a ton of clearance, and this is where the exhaust it wasn't where the exhaust was. It's just way too close. And even though it's under the filter, you can unscrew the filter, pull it off to the side. I'm going to come in, I'm going to flop it to this side of the filter, kind of between the frame, and then you'll have to go to the inside to take the filter off. I can't get away from it, but I'm going to get more clearance than, 3/4 of an inch. So that's one of the reasons to do it, is just to get a lot of that heat out of the way, allow the air to move in there. They're still tucked up. They're still not going to be, they shouldn't be the lowest point on the car. Excuse me. The turns might go lower than the cross member. I don't know. This is my reference. This is my lowest point, is the cross member on the car. So the front cross member, everything else is above it. So we'll start on the pipes and the expansion joints and all that stuff now. All right, driver's side head pipe, that's the muffler, the expansion joint, fully welded in, just finished. This was I had a band clamp on here. I cut off the expansion part of it, the expanded tube, where this slipped into that, or this slipped into that, whatever. I cut it off of here, and I welded that guy on. I had to clock this just a little bit, but the flow is just fine for the collector. And so now all that goes continuously back to the bumper. I saved a couple of band clamps in the process. I just finished welding that up, and now she should look pretty good when I install it. All right, there she is. A lot going on, but I got space everywhere. O2 sensor has wind on both sides. These are the body cabling. I'm nice and down and out of the way down on the starter. Okay, and then underneath, if we look, she's right about the frame, but if I go down about level, you can start to peek out and see the transpan, which is as I remember now, slightly lower than the the cross member. The oil pan is higher. No, we're looking pretty good, because if I line up the frame rails, yeah, that pan is a little bit lower. So I'm not worried about it at all. It looks good. It's down and out of the way. It's going to get plenty of air movement across it. And I saved the, I'll save the wiring. I am probably going to build a heat shield, maybe coming off of the pan, 2 tabs on the pan and up, just to make sure that as the air moves across there, it doesn't radiate against the wiring. That's the coil trigger, or the crank trigger is in there, and the electric fans. And they're both critical items to drivability and long-term, success. I did straighten out this run here. I got a couple little kinks in it that I had in it when I couldn't get my bender in there, but that's okay. I just took and reformed this a little bit to get these running stacked, looking nice on top of each other, and get it as high as I can. I can't really get it much higher than I have it at this point. So that's transcoolant line, but everything sights down and looks good as it's making its way in. So, and I can't go that much farther in because my shift linkage comes up through here, and they're just a lot of things going on. But now I got space. I got space everywhere. Happy with it. Passenger side complete. You can change the oil filter. I got as far away from I'm way down there, but I got as far away from the fuel lines as I possibly could, so everything's down. I come out and I decided to swing out around the oil filter. I had an elbow. I had 2 elbows that I left over from the kit that I sliced up and stuck in there. And he is hanging a little bit. Let's see here. He's probably about the same. Actually about the same as it's about the same as the pan, about the same as the other side, because he kicks back up right away. So yeah, that's the trans pan right there. It's gonna work good. And the expansion joints, both welded in, same location. Symmetry is beautiful. So I'm happy with it. That portion of the project's complete. Now on to the computer controls and the new O2 sensor and whatever else that I need to do. All right. We've got the exhaust in. I made the IAC idle air control work. Had to machine the bottom of the air cleaner just a little bit to get the new setup. This is a deep, I'm not going to pull it off, but the bottom is aluminum, and I measured it. It was 330 thousandths thick. The aluminum, because there's machining and steps in it. It's a casting and plated, but I had enough to take about 200 thousandths out of it. Actually, I left 50 thousandths, so about 250, 270 thousandths out of it to cut a channel into that aluminum, because the IAC went above the air horn on the throttle body because of the differences. Now remember, the original one was just a little guy in there, 4-wire or 5-wire, what is that? 4-wire. And the new one is a pulse width modulation, so it's only a 2-wire. These are the wires hanging out. Grabbed it off of a Ford in the pick and pull, and got it made an adapter to integrate into the original location, so it looks relatively seamless and factory. Anyway, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin. So I have a Dodge electronic automatic transmission, so I purchased a TCM 430 trans controller right here. That comes with its harness separately. I purchased the MicroSquirt, the wideband O2 sensor, which I screwed in right here. And at this point then, I need to take the original harness down. That's this guy. And as you know, each pin has a wire. Now these aren't fully populated. They're nearly fully populated. One of this one is fully populated. But there's a lot of wires in here. And those run into the harness and up into the engine, into the injectors, and everywhere else within the engine. So I'm going to need to grab all the criticals, and basically what I'm going to do is open that harness back up and pull out all the wiring that I do not need, one strand at a time, or one wire, not one strand, one wire at a time for each component. Of course, the injectors will be a little different, but because there's 8 of them. But and begin wiring the system up. I'm going to start with the transmission, because that's just a couple, your speed, which replaces your old speedometer cable. In this case, torque converter lockup, and the 2-3 shift or 3-4 shift, and in this 2001 automatic transmission. So I'm going to get that harness going first, because it makes sense. I do know that I get up with this length to where I want to be on the firewall. I'm just replacing the factory PCM, which is this guy right here. I'm just replacing him with those 2 components right there, the engine management system and the transmission control system. The nice thing about the MicroSquirt or the MegaSquirt products is they have extra data I/O inputs and outputs. And so that's going to also integrate with a Raspberry Pi, which is another small, circuit board, hobbyist circuit board that I have my son working on a digital display. So that's going to do your data I/O, your turn signals, all your gauges, however many gauges I want for what I can get data points from. So that'll interface with the MicroSquirt, and voila, we'll go from there. It's not a small job. It's a relatively large job, but it's relatively time consuming. But I'll pull you through it as I'm moving along. Okay, real time for that was about 20 minutes, 21 minutes. Basically unrolling the convoluted tubing or wire loom or whatever you want to call it. And I started at the PCM, and I started bringing it back to expose it. Now, you'll note that, I put the clamps back in the locations they were in, and pulled it all back. Whether the routing is exactly the same or not, whether if I run two separate harnesses or one or whatever, that's not what's significant. What is significant is that the locations that I kept the wires close to are known locations for the body to fit on and not have any interference. So for example, I know I can come back through here and up the center, but I know when I'm running up the bell housing, the back side of the bell housing, that I need to stay below this surface. Okay, it comes up through the trans tunnel in the car and mounts to the firewall. So as I'm peeling back the loom for the transmission, I also evidently put my O2 sensors in along with it. So on the original harness, this had a right and left O2, and I pinned out, this is a standard O2 plug, or no, either one of these are. I don't remember what I was originally going to run two O2s on this. Oh, it's a pre and post. It's a single exhaust, and one's pre-cat and one's post-cat. And for some strange reason, I changed the connector from one of these styles to the other style. And actually, I have the O2 that I used when I fired it. Yeah, so I had a straight 4-pin. I changed it to a weather pack straight 4-pin. And I left I know why. And I left the other one to a square 4-pin. And the reason I did that is to differentiate between the front and the rear for me. And originally I was going to put the front in, which is right there, and I was going to put a rear in and use a pull down resistor so that I mirrored the pattern of the front, but slowed it down and reduced the signal, which would give an indication of less, but hopefully less hydrocarbons, that kind of stuff, less items. The oxygen signal would be lower or slower and lower. It would lag. But after some research on that, those things are not a reliable way of doing it, and you eventually still get codes back, and that among other things, other sensors in here. The purge system on the old Dodges had a time, had a cycle that it went through first and all that. And although I am putting a purge on here to keep fuel vapor out from the garage, I'm not going through a whole litany of tests through the PCM, and many other things that would throw a check engine light. So getting rid of all that. So I'm going to start with this harness, but I see as I come up with this harness, some items go, what I'll say, north, but up into here. So and whether they loop back or not, I don't recall all that. And I'm not really concerned about that right now. It's more exploratory. If I consume all of the wires that I consume, I will identify. Okay, once I put the new harness in, I will identify them, probably may cut them, but isolate them, tag them, and get them off to the side. So I'm eventually working my way back, meticulously removing that segment of the harness, one small bite at a time. And when you're working with an elephant of work, that to eat it, it's just one bite at a time, and eventually you get there. Now there's another harness about 3/4 that size going out that way, and so we're serving all the systems idle air control, the throttle position sensor, the map, intake air temp, all the injectors, and of course we're pulling off of in this case I left the AC wiring in here, the alternator, everything off the front of the engine. And the harness is buried underneath the intake manifold running down each side. So, but prior to some of that, of course, goes up for the fan and that on the underside of the motor, because I didn't want wires exposed on the front of the engine as well. So I will continue to poke at this and slowly build in the transmission harness, but I'm going to jump on their instructions and see if the connectors came with. I didn't, I opened the box, everything's still in the bag, and look and see if I need to splice into these connectors for the transmission or if they provide them. So that's where I'm headed.